already did that. Not it. I'll talk about bots and alerts all day long, but
Oh, same here. Uh-oh.
we're recorded now. I'm so not used to workspace in dark mode.
I can't stand it any other way. I tried for a long time, and even now people get a PDF export of it, and I'm like, no, I just gotta go find the real one because I can't work.
It's funny. I generally prefer light mode for everything I do, and my kids get irrationally angry about it. Like, ew, mom, why?
It hurts. It's too bright. Even now I'm in the basement basically, so there's not much real light. So if it was completely dark and a white screen, it's too much.
Looks like we've got some folks coming.
And Megan's here too. We're going to stick her with talking about cohorts.
Hmm. Not an expert on cohorts, but okay.
I'm sorry, I was just throwing you in there.
That's okay.
Yeah, I don't know, Christelle. I see your name there in green. I think that's.
Yeah, should I erase it?
So, yeah. I understand actually the theoretical approach to using them more than the practical approach. I feel like whenever I build them, I always get a little bit tripped up in the drop downs and stuff like that for some reason. Normally it's the other way around, but yeah, I'm like, yeah, you use it for this. I'm like, wait, but do I actually translate that into things on the screen?
I think I'm more on the practical side, so we will try and explain it
Okay.
definitely.
Okay, good.
Should we start? Or do you guys want to wait a few more minutes? We've got already 15 people who've joined.
We can at least probably do intros.
Yeah.
Mandy says go ahead whenever we're ready.
Perfect. Thank you.
Well, I can intro first since I'm sharing my screen. I'm Nick Walter. Done a couple of these office hours a few times, so bear with me because I'm still pretty new at this. But I work at Kroger Digital. I've worked there for let's see, 5 years now as a senior digital analyst. So you guys would all know what that is. So yeah, that's my qualifications to be here, I guess. And hopefully we can do a lot to answer any questions.
I guess I can go next. I'm Jen Coons. I am a principal analytics architect at 33 Sticks, which is a very small analytics and optimization agency. And I have been basically an implementation consultant since starting at Omniture in 2006. But this is my first year doing the Champions program, and this is my first time doing office hours. Or being on this side of office hours.
Welcome, Jen.
Thank you. We got some Omniture representation up there.
Yeah. I can go next. I'm Megan Powers. I am a senior manager of digital data strategy and data governance strategy at CarMax. I've been here about 9 years. Been in this role for a long time. Before that, I was at SiriusXM doing similar role, Adobe Analytics implementation. My team is half developers and half analysts. It's really fun. We get to work with a lot of folks, and I'm a 3-time champion.
Nice.
Is that everybody?
Christelle, do you want to go next? Oh, yeah. Okay,
Sure.
I'll go next. Thank you.
Go
So, yeah, I'm Jude Lindberg. I'm working as a digital analytics manager for DHL, where I'm primarily responsible for data strategy and maturity and enablement. And I'm a second-time Adobe Analytics champion, so I'm really grateful again for this opportunity to be here tonight to help answer your questions with the rest of the amazing champions on the call. And I have been working in digital analytics probably for the last I'd say 9 years now, so it's quite a couple of years. Started off also in the old Omniture days with Adobe Insights and Adobe Data Workbench, and then Adobe Analytics at various other companies as well. So I'm really looking forward to see what kind of questions you have tonight. So please do put them in the chat, and we'll try and answer as many of your questions as we can. And then I'll hand it over to Christelle.
Hi, everybody. I'm Christelle. I work for a company called Gen Digital. That is an umbrella brand for software security products such as Norton, LifeLock, Avira, Avast, AVG, CCleaner, Reputation Defender. And I've been doing analytics for like 18 years, since before HBX got bought by Omniture. So
wow.
old timer. And I am a fourth time Adobe Analytics champion, and I'm just hoping we can help you answer any questions you have today.
Nice. I think that is everyone then, right?
Yeah.
All right. So who wants to talk about cohort analysis? I know we were all eager for this one. I know the theory. I just haven't had a ton of use cases for it, but
Well, I don't really want to talk about cohorts because I don't have a ton of experience with these, because my company is more of a subscription business and it's not like great use cases for cohorts. But what I will say is I do think it's very important to understand the use case, what you're using cohorts, like what are you trying to do? And it's really to see like the, time between two events and how people are being distributed across that time. So if we have the person who asked the question here, it would be good to get some more details on what you're trying to do, and all that. I have used them in the past for people who added to cart but did not order in the session. How are they returning? So that's the use cases that I've used it on, but I'm not really a cohort expert. Anybody
Thank you,
else?
Christelle. No, I think that's a really good way to explain it. I think another use case that I would probably think about that I've used it for is more from like marketing analytics, because you could actually break it down in the advanced settings to actually look at different things like the marketing channel dimension, and you could look at your retention rate for different marketing channels compared to each other within a campaign period. So you can see which channels are more likely to actually bring people back to the site than other channels. It's really helpful for that. But also, if you want to use the latency section within the settings, you can also have a look at the kind of pre and post like a campaign period as well, like how many visitors who visited your site prior to a campaign came back. That's also really helpful sometimes to understand that if you're trying to understand your retention as well, for people who've visited the site prior to a campaign and maybe they've come back because of the campaign activity. So it's almost a second way to get those people who are still considering your brand to actually make a commitment and actually buy or do something. So it's really, really helpful in that sense. But it's always, I would say, explore, as Christelle said, depending on your business question, what you're trying to look at. Another thing that's also really helpful is to think about different segments as well. So within your inclusion criteria, you can have a look at visits, they come to the site, and then maybe in your return criteria, you could look at people who've visited the site, but then when they come back, they make a purchase. So that could be a different metric that you could use on your return criteria. But people can also use it for churn rates and loads of other very, very great uses. Does anyone else want to add on to that?
Yeah, I can. So here at Kroger, obviously, we're looking to see how many people make purchases. So we'll look very closely at people who come to the site, and that can be our inclusion, and then how often do they make a purchase? Or people who have made a purchase, and that's the segment, and then another order is placed here. So how much time in between purchases, and we can see that in each column. The only caveat to that is the first column isn't it's a week out. So anything between um, the initial inclusion and the next column, be it that you can do it by day, by week, by quarter, or by year, just depending on how you break out the date range. But if somebody were to place an order in the first week, the first order, place another one in that, they're not going to be included. They're not going to be included in that first column twice. So there's a little bit of additional analytics that you'll need for the short term in one of these, which is my only caveat with these. But it's like they said, like everybody else said, it's very easy to just understand returning purchases, returning customers, how often somebody does an action, and then of 100% of the people that were included, 10% come back to do this in a week, 10% of them come back in a second week, 10% of them come back in a third week, and that's the retention versus churn. So you can either exclude everybody who wasn't included in the next week, or you can include everybody who was included in um, the first inclusion criteria. Honestly, this is one of those this is a table that you could probably spend about 2 hours on if everybody was prepared for it, talking about it, because there's so many things that you can do with it. And it's feels a lot more complicated than it is. Um,
Do we
so
have an
yeah,
example that we can look at? I've been trying to figure out what data points in this report suite are. I did cart ads and checkouts, um,
let me see.
but I made the mistake of doing it with the month granularity, and that was not useful in a report
Yeah.
with a date range of a month.
So I could just do like visits and then online order.
Sure.
And then granularity be week. This month is fine for that, and then build it and see how it goes.
And
Hopefully there's something back.
Adobe does have good documentation too for learning. I'll
Oh
throw a
yeah.
link out there, but it has more examples and a couple of videos.
I don't have it on me, but the Analytics for Dummies, Adobe Analytics for Dummies book is pretty thorough here too. Yeah.
There you go.
Yep. A little plug for Eric, because that's actually a pretty handy book. But yeah, that's the other downside with Cohort. It takes a minute because it's going through a lot of data and trying to compile. So it does take a minute to go ahead and do this. But there we go. Oh, well, I've only got a couple weeks worth of data here. So, 2 weeks. So that makes sense.
Sure. But even this, like, we
I
can
could
get a rough
probably
idea
change
of it shows all of the people who were
included
there
and
September
then
29th, 93,000.
mhm.
And of those, only 9 returned the following week
Yeah.
in our fictional data set.
Yeah, this is our sandbox, so there's probably just
Yeah.
not a lot of data in there.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm a very
I'll open it up.
examples-driven person, so.
I love it. I think the data set that this actually is attached to is not one that would be purchases very often. So
What I had done for my example, I was trying to do like people who, I did it for the last month, showing by week, like people who added to carts, like had a cart edition event, but did not order in session. How are they returning over weeks? So I had metrics as visit is equal or greater to 1. And then I had a segments like added to cart, but did not purchase, like did not order in session. And then return criteria was metrics order is greater or equal to 1. And I did retention in the granularity week and type retention. And it gave me like a nice distribution, but it's a little boring for a subscription business.
Yeah, we also, like, we're not a subscription business, but most people only buy, one car every few years, right? So they're returning to the site, but they're not really purchasing. So we use it a lot to look at return behavior, and maybe if they take the next step, it doesn't always have to be a purchase, but did they visit one time? Did they do financing the next time? Did they explore trade-in options the next time? We also use it for some marketing channel type stuff, which I think I heard someone else mention. Did they come through this method and then did they come back through the same method or via some other method? You can also use the attribution panel for that, but we have used Cohort in the past.
Right.
So
we move on to alerts.
Yeah.
And Nick, I realized that all the comments I added in here the other day did not save, so I just saved them. If you wouldn't mind refreshing this.
Sure.
that breaks something, I'm sorry.
No, you're good. Probably. It's probably fine.
Oh no, the right screen.
Right, exactly. See what I mean? It's a lot.
Spinny.
Do we have more details on the question? It was a little generic, like how are the alert thresholds measured? Because I think we can all talk about the different types of alerts we set up and all that, but do we have details on what that meant really? Not, it doesn't seem like it, yeah.
I think it is to do with like the percentages are kind of above expected levels. I think it uses the same logic that the anomaly detection uses, and there's quite a lot of documentation actually on that to explain all the different methods that they use. It applies things like seasonality. It even looks at things like key holiday periods as well, and depending on like if you're measuring it for like daily or hourly or monthly or weekly, it uses different logic as well. I see if I can find the documentation of that and I will link it as well. I don't know if that helps to answer it a little bit more, but I think we can definitely explain a bit more around what the alerts are and some great use cases as well. So, now, Christelle, do you want to go first? I know you've put some notes in there already.
On alerts, yeah, I mean, so I use them for so many things. I must have hundreds of alerts set up. I use them, number one, just to check like traffic on. We have a lot of different sites, so just traffic on specific sites. Is it like above or under? So just catching like obvious stuff, but also to monitor our costs, like in terms of server calls, without even using the server call usage alert, which is another option. But I actually don't even use that. I just use it for like my specific sites, properties, apps to see like which change. The other one that I use a lot is actually distinct count alerts. So I have a lot of alerts set up for distinct counts. So I want to see if one EVAR goes crazy and goes from like, if it usually has 15 values a day, does it go to like 200 all of a sudden? And if so, why? So this helps me track like issues that dev accidentally did. It helps me track bots, people, putting in things into our variables, like dirtying our data. So that's the one I use a lot. I have distinct count alerts for almost all our variables. And I just monitor to make sure our EVARs are nice and clean, don't go crazy. So that's what I use alerts for the most. But I mean, there are so many use cases because you can get so granular with the segments and the variables you can use and the success events. I think they're very powerful. What are you guys using them for?
I often just use them for data quality issues too, of making sure that visits and I mean the most basic of metrics and then any KPIs are all within range. But it's very easy to get carried away with them, and I've found in a lot of cases people get enough alerts they just start ignoring all of them. So we've tried to be very, very careful about. Usually we'll run them for like a month first with a very small audience and see whether or not it's getting triggered unnecessarily and or giving useful data, because otherwise people just their eyes glaze right past them because they get them too often.
Yeah, so I use the anomaly detection for that. And then I usually, like you, I schedule them to myself for like a week or whatever. So I will use the Adobe anomaly detection, but then if I start getting a bunch of alerts and there's no action required, I start using the percentages. Like, is above 200. I just start asking myself, like, at what point do I care to do something?
Yeah.
Because, yeah, like you say, people will just start filing them. So.
Yeah, I'd recommend that little, I think someone mentioned the preview window up at the top. If you see that, oh, that's alert, you're going to get alerted 10 times over the past 30 days, and you know that it's generally working and not broken already, then that tells you your anomaly threshold is too low. Bump it up higher so that you don't get a lot of false positives. I wrote some notes here, but yeah, we set up an alert for every single event that we have in analytics. For the most important ones, we do both volume-based and anomaly-based alerts. We also set up an alert for every EVAR using the green metric version of the EVARs. Typically with EVARs, we'll do anomaly alerts, especially because a lot of them are
So sorry,
global.
by the metric version, are you just the instances? So we could
Yes.
do
Like I
like,
say, like
yeah,
instances of EVAR 13
Yeah.
Versus the orange dimension based
Yep.
alerts. Yep. And yeah, so like global EVARs, you know, if you have a volume based one, it may not drop a ton down if it breaks in one place. But if you use anomaly alerts, you're more likely to get alerted if it breaks in one place, maybe.
trying
but
really
again,
hard to trigger an alert in this data set.
oh,
It
yep.
changed by 2%.
And then,
just from granularity to hourly, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you're gonna catch some stuff.
Still nothing. Come on.
We
Well,
also
changes by 2%. Oh, it's still nothing.
Yeah.
Sorry, Megan, you were saying.
Oh, I was going to say, yeah, part of our process is anytime we set up a new EVAR or event, we also go in and add the alert for it, just as part of the admin setup. And we have a variable map that lists out all our custom EVARs and events. We have a column specifically identifying whether an alert has been set up to help just make sure we're not missing something.
So I love
So-
that distinct count idea. Can
Yeah,
you
me too.
guide me through how to do that?
Sure, I can.
I mean, I already know, and we're just doing this for the audience's sake.
And Megan, that's a great idea because I usually set up an alert for every new EVAR, but sometimes I forget. See, because the alerts only go to me, so sometimes I forget. But
Right.
you actually have to set up a segment to
Okay.
to distinct count.
Gotcha.
So I'm sorry. Let me find it for you.
I can pass it over to you if you want.
Sure. I'm gonna take a minute to remember and find my brain. But, it won't be too hard. I do it for pages and I do it for EVARs. I don't see why you wouldn't do it for success events as well. But the way I set up the distinct count, bear with me, is right. So they are calculated metrics. Okay, I should show it. I'm sorry. Let me do it. Okay. Let me make sure I share the right screen. Okay, right, you can see this. So you want to do like a distinct count for, let's say, EVAR. Somebody give me a number, 6. All right, so what you do is you look for, well, I don't know how they've named the EVARs in here actually, so maybe I should pick something else. Anybody know the EVARs in the sandbox?
I do not.
Okay.
I had just seen internal campaign, but I don't know if it has data.
Okay, we'll do without it. So you want to use here like the functions. You want to use the approximate count, right? You pull that in, and then you do the dimension. So I would use the instances for that EVAR, right? So, or actually, no, I would use the dimension. Sorry. So if you have like the EVAR, I guess you could do page, I suppose. Yeah, you could do page. So you put that in, and that's going to do distinct count for pages, right? So save that. So if you have, like, let's say you usually have 100 pages a day, and not like page views, but distinct pages, right? If this all of a sudden goes to 300, it'll change from 100 to 300. So again, it's not the page views, it's the unique values that come into that EVAR, or to, in this case, the pages. the pages dimension. And so you can see it like trended over time. So if it spikes or it falls, that helps you catch, quality issues. And then also you can create a alert on this. So you would just go to components, or actually you could do it directly from here, I believe.
Yeah.
Create alert from selection. So you could do that and then just say like, hey, distinct count for pages. This is where I use the Adobe anomaly detection. Um, but if it starts firing all the time, like Jen was saying, then I would just start doing, I would just start doing like changes by, 50%, 20%, stuff like that, right? So just alert for pages distinct count. So I like distinct count because it helps me to understand like who's coming in, did I expect that or not, and then to be able to catch errors fast and fix them fast. So yeah.
Thank you. That's a really good explanation. I think something else to think about as well for alerts is you can actually use the description of the alert to set priorities. So you might have some alerts that are maybe like on your payment pages. And if that alert triggers that, there's an error on a payment page or the page isn't firing or there's something that happens, it's a very high priority. So when people get their alert email, they know it's like a P1 versus something that might be more like a minor priority. You can maybe give it like a P3 as an example. So you could really use the description within the alerts to actually decide like how important that alert is as well. I would definitely agree with like everyone on the call. You could definitely test your alerts before you start sending it to people. Maybe send it to yourself for like a week or two, just see how frequently you get it, because sometimes you don't want them to be getting an alert every single day, because then your thresholds are not at the right level. So definitely it's worth testing. And it's worth building a bit of an alert strategy as well, to think about like what are those operational alerts that you want to set up versus more tactical alerts as well. Something that we do as well that I think is really helpful is we have like a email address for a Teams channel as an example, and you can put that within your alert as the recipient. So if you want something to be alerted to like a group of people and they're part of a Teams group, you can also set something up so they then get an alert to tell them that suddenly, I don't know, page views is below expected levels or visits are suddenly peaking for whatever reason. It could potentially be bot traffic, or there could be a massive external factor that's driving traffic to the website that you don't really expect to see.
Yeah,
And
I
then
like the
anyone else?
idea of using the description, right? It's like, hey, if you ever get an alert about this, drop everything and fix it. We also send alerts to different email distros. So like most of the time, like on my team, for example, it's half analysts, half developers. Most of the time, all the alerts go straight to the analyst group because we try to diagnose it and make sure it's, is it a false positive or is it real? Is it something we know what happened before? And we triage that before we maybe get it in front of our developers. But a couple things like the server call alerts, because most of the things we've been talking about here are analytics alerts, but you can also set server call alerts. Those get sent to everybody, because that's affecting budget. And if those go up high enough, it's usually almost always a developer related type thing. So those get sent to everybody. So that's just some helpful ways to break it out. And you can also create rules in your Outlook or Teams to, let's say like, oh, if I ever get this alert, put an important label on it, or if I get this alert, send it, put it in this folder, or something like that.
I will give a warning if you're doing hourly based alerts. Um, Sometimes the data doesn't process within a given hour.
Mm-hmm.
So we had some alerts that literally were named like something major is broken in all capital letters, coming through and freaking me out, when really it was just it detected over that hour that there weren't enough page views because it just hadn't processed that data yet. So be careful with the hourly alerts. They don't do that often, but when they do, it can be terrifying.
Talking about things you shouldn't do, you can use mobile numbers. So if there's somebody you really
Mm-hmm.
detest in your company, you can send them hourly, messages directly on their cell phone. That could be fun too. Just an idea.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah, you will get more, you will get obviously more alerts with hourly data, and you have to know your data set. If something's really variable, like if you're always getting a ton of traffic, then I would just go daily, right? But you know your data set, and you know your metrics. I would just kind of take those on an individual basis.
Yeah. No, our hourly ones were truly for something big has broken, like your
Like
visits
major.
went down to zero, not
Yep.
anomaly detection, but a below a reasonable threshold of if we're getting
Mhm.
10% of our usual page views, then that's,
Yep.
immediate look into thing. So. And I will say that alerts have saved the day on those occasions for us many times of, oops, somebody published something that broke something, and we might have gone a few days without realizing it. So,
Yeah, you catch it fast, you fix it fast. Right?
yep. All right, we feel good about alerts. I guess I'll be the screen sharer again here.
Everybody's dying to talk about bots.
Oh boy, yep.
Yeah. I
Bots
added,
have been a big part of my life.
yeah, I added some comments here, so if you're not seeing them, we may need to refresh, or I could just speak to them.
That's all
Go for it.
Get there.
right. I'm not seeing them. For me, there is a document that I use all the time of just things to look for when looking for bots. Um, from Adobe of, obvious things like user agent, um, page views and visits and unique visitors all being one or being the same as each other. Some of these things, like I don't see time zone in workspace anymore. Was that ever a thing, or is this something that somebody that must have done custom? For me, the hardest part of this, though, is that no single one of these signals is enough to say it's a bot. If they have Linux, then they might be a little bit more suspicious, but it's not unless they have Linux and they're from Ashburn, Virginia, and they're direct traffic that I'd feel comfortable enough getting rid of them. But my biggest things with bots are, one, if you're using virtual report suites, um, like you have your one main report suite, you don't have any reason to segment it out. It's not like a global roll up type situation, but it still can be really good to have a virtual report suite on top of your normal one. That's the main one you use for analysis. So that if you do find bots or some other thing you need to segment out, you can easily do that and it'll automatically apply to all of the reports there. It's often just a hard process getting folks to migrate onto that. Trying to remember the other. Yeah, I'll toss it back. I know lots of people had lots of things to say about bots. So.
At a very basic level, I would say, like, if you go to the top, I mean, this is like the number one thing you do when you set up a report suite. So I think if you're like a very beginning user, there's instructions there. Go to admin report suite, edit your settings, go to general menu, look for the bot rules, enable that. Yeah, thank you. That helps. Enable that. It's just a checkbox. Like just hit that. That will already do, you know, um, that will already do the basics. Like I think if you, and if you don't know what we're talking about, go make sure it's checked.
Oh,
um,
shucks. I don't have access to show it, but yeah, it
yeah,
would be right there.
yeah, it's there.
I'll be honest, I haven't had silly dog. I had warned everyone this would happen at 4:30, and it is happening exactly at 4:30. My dog's going nuts. But I haven't had a super ton of luck with the IAB rules, or maybe I'm taking them for granted, because they do get rid of a lot of the more established bots or Google search crawlers and things like that. But uh, I've had to generally do a lot of detective work to find the non-standard bots that aren't in that IAB list. So
Yeah, same. That's just the 1 minute thing that you can do. But in that same section, you can set up your own bot rules. So if you see like a user agent or an IP address or IP ranges, at my company, we exclude our IP ranges, employee IP ranges, using a DB Vista rule. But you could import them in there instead. You could do one-off like IP ranges if you or sorry, IP addresses if you have like a consultant that's always on your site or things like that. So at a very basic level, you can import a lot of things there. Then, like I think about a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago, not good with dates, Adobe put out these bot reports. So they're kind of like limited dimensions that you can use. And there's also, like somebody pointed out, I think it was Julian, I'm not sure, that, you know, Adobe even has like a bot report that's like pre-built for you. You know, like on the left in the not the visualizations, but the panels, right? Like if you
It's
go
in the reports section. Yeah. If you go to like, you know,
yeah,
where you go
yeah.
out of this completely, I don't want you to do it now, but we'll do it
Oh, no,
afterwards.
it's
But
not
yeah,
there. No.
if you go to reports, there's, and you go under, I think it is under, uh, hold on, I'll tell you now. It's audience. So you go to reports under projects, you know, and you open a new workspace area. And then you go to audience and then go to bots. And there's like a pre-built report in Adobe to actually help you to look at your
Yeah.
bot reporting.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this area is an easy
there.
one to ignore, and there's a lot of good stuff in here.
Yep.
Especially if you were used to the old reports and analytics interface. Um,
Mhm.
this can
Sorry,
be
I
handy
didn't
for
mean
that.
to interrupt, Christoph.
No, that's good. Even like I think Mandy said, the health dashboard, I believe that's in there as well. So that's a great area that I never check and that I should. I've just kind of created my own using their bot name dimension and their bot page views, bot occurrences, and the page view ratio. So I've just kind of created my own real quick, and I just have alerts based on them. So that's all. The thing is, you really can't break those down with anything. Um,
Yeah.
then I also have processing
But
rules.
sorry, real fast. It's important why we can't break it down with anything, because that data is not treated as real data with the rest of your data. So you're not going to see those page views amongst your regular page views. They are mutually exclusive, which is good for your normal data. Sorry, go on.
No, that's good. It's still cool that Adobe like provides it, but yeah, it's very limited in you know what it can do. So what I've done is just capturing user agents using a processing rule. So I just have like the visitor ID, which I already capture in a separate EVAR. Like it's just the, you know, s.dot visitor ID from Adobe. Throw that into an EVAR. I've always had that. And I say like, hey, if that's not set and there's another EVAR that I always set on my pages, you know, then take the user agent and throw it into a new EVAR. So I use that, and then I have alerts on that to see like, hey, does it, you know, does it like fire anything, right? And sometimes it does. And then when you see that, you can take that user agent and put it in the bot rules that I talked about in the first one. And then you can always do complex Vista rules with Adobe that will cost you some money, but they can do more specific things. But I want to see what Jen says because I think she has a lot of experience with bots in her life.
So yeah, I do think, like I said, already being in a virtual report suite has many advantages, but being able to combat bots is a big one. And then the other biggest helpful thing you can do is capture user agent in an EVAR, and it is as simple as this. And you will never use it for analysis, but when you need it, you really need it, and it's not something that Adobe makes available out of the box. But aside from that, for me, I usually work backwards of build a segment of things that humans would do that bots usually wouldn't, and then bring that into a bunch of the reports that I would usually use to spot a bot, like domain. If you have a domain of AmazonAWS.com, that's Amazon Web Services and often used by bots. User agent, obviously there's a lot of, Linux and weird things like that. Monitor resolution, that's what I was using. Literally just yesterday I did a bot audit for a client, and we found that there were people with monitor resolutions that were huge, except the browser height was only like 200 pixels high, which isn't really a human thing. And then cities, Ashburn, Virginia is one of the biggest ones where there's a lot of data centers there. And then Boardman, Oregon, which has a population of 4,000, but accounts for a crazy amount of internet traffic, again, because of data centers. So once you can find some of the things that have those really classic bot signals, then see, is that something that a lot of humans are, things that we know are human, like going through the checkout process. If very few of them are coming from Boardman, Oregon, but we're getting a ton of traffic from Boardman, then that means Boardman might be an odd one. Somebody in the chat saying Columbus, Ohio is another one too. So yeah,
or another case that I see is like same visitor ID, 2 different cities, and you're like, okay, that's not a person. You're not going to be in Ohio and California in the same session.
Yeah. The hard thing is that's just not scalable. Like none of this is particularly scalable. It's very hard to set up rules that will just kind of always work and always catch something, because you can't do a segment that says, if a city gets a random spike and it's in Russia, then alert me or something. It's tricky, but
yeah, we typically we do the things like you all have already said to set it up at the beginning proactively, like checking the IAB bot filter, using the bot reports. But then other things we're doing after that are kind of what like, oh, we've found this issue. It looks funny. Like another kind of indicator is, oh, a ton of visits all in with a limited amount of time, but no conversions or something. Or like visits without clicks and stuff like that. And so then we're like, okay, now we've identified a new one. We'll go add it to the list. Versus, like you said, it's not really scalable to try to think about all the different things that could possibly be a bot ahead of time. And they're always changing too. So you're never going to be able to catch them all up front. And then I just added a couple of notes here. IP address, can be a helpful way. It's not immediately available in the Adobe Analytics UI, but you can pull it out of Data Warehouse, and you can track IPs via processing rules here by saying overwrite the value of like prop 10 with IP address, because that's a value here. So that's been a way to get it more readily available in the Adobe Analytics UI versus just using Data Warehouse.
So if you're in the EU, be careful on that one.
Yes, it does.
I think user agent too is also considered personal information. So that's a whole other story. Yeah, there is a lot of interesting information in processing rules that you really can't get any other way, and takes very little to set up.
I guess just something to add to this, and I think you've already given some really great examples and great ideas, is maybe to have a think about, is there any way that you can then potentially share that user agent or the IP address, obviously, if you're outside of the EU, with your IT team, so they can actually somehow find a way maybe to even stop that bot even hitting your site? Because in the end, it's not just really about messing up your data set in Adobe Analytics, but it could also be that it's actually causing problems on your website, it's slowing it down, and it could be actually be like really bad for your website's health as well. So it's definitely something I think that once you can actually pin down who that bot is like, yeah, to exclude them, but then also speak to other teams to see if there's ways that you can properly block them.
Yeah, though I had a financial services client that literally 40% of their traffic is bots. Like a disgusting, and the bots aren't even consistent, because you're never going to be 100% bot free, but so long as they're always there at kind of the same level, you can still do analysis decently. But if they aren't consistent, then it causes problems. But a huge number of those bots we discovered were actually white hat hackers. They were bounty hunters trying to spot areas of weakness on the site to alert us to it, which was very interesting. I even saw the bounty hunter's name in the data that we were getting, that we could trace back to them. So lots of interesting use cases for bots. There's a lot of things where I have no idea why the bots are bothering to do what they're doing and what they get out of it. But oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, not every bot is bad, right?
Yeah.
There are plenty of good bots. It's just whether and how you want to count them in your traffic. Like you may want to put them in a virtual report suite so they're still there and stuff like that, but they're not affecting your conversion metrics, like your visit to conversion rate. One thing to be careful of, if you okay, maybe you find like 20 different IP addresses, and you're like, oh, I need to go block all these. You want to kind of let people know that you're going to do that before you do it, because it could be accounting for this huge volume of traffic. And even though it's bot related, maybe you don't want it in there, that's the right decision. All of a sudden, your stakeholders will be like, oh, what happened to visits?
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
big drop. So just make sure you have alignment with people using the data, and maybe do it one IP at a time, so you can really kind of, so it's less of a dramatic. Anyway, just
Yeah.
one thing to be cautious of.
No,
They still
that's a good call out.
But
Yeah. Yeah, the reason I was doing a bot audit yesterday was because they discovered that they were getting like 30,000 newsletter signups a day when only about 2,000 of them were human.
Yeah.
And yeah, you have to warn everybody that sorry, it. And if you are making changes using segmentation and virtual report suites as opposed to the bot rules, segments and virtual report suites go backwards. So it's not only going to cause a dip in your data going forward, it's going to make last month's report have different numbers now, more accurate numbers,
Right.
but different numbers. The good news is that often it brings conversion rates up because the bots weren't converting and we're just looking like white noise.
Maybe another tool to suggest as well, and I don't know if it's something that any of you guys use, is like a tool like Medallia DXA, something that you can actually look at the sessions and see what those bots are doing, because there's ways that you can definitely link between Adobe Analytics and Medallia's tools as well. So you can look at the same segments and understand how that particular user might have actually performed, and you can walk through that whole session that's recorded of their whole journey, and you can see if it's a bot or not. Sometimes with bots, you would see that there's not even any mouse movement. They just flick between pages without actually clicking on anything. So there's definitely lots of ways that you can look at the behavior as well to see if there's another ways that you can actually stop them or block them or exclude them, and understand if it is actually a real bot or if it's actually a person as well.
Yeah, and I had meant to mention there are third-party tools that can help spot bots, but even something like Demand-Based, which is an account-based marketing tool that generally would let you know what company people are from that are visiting your site. It does a decent job of spotting bot traffic. So there used to be plugins and things like there was the Hit Governor plugin for a while that you could add to your S code, and it would look for human type movement and help you establish who was human or bot. But it's just a complicated, hard thing to get right, you know. So, all right. So we all good on bots? Nick, I see that you're back. We lost you there for a little bit.
Yeah, I'm renovating the house, so internet and electricity are spotty.
Yeah,
Best.
fair. All right, then we had a question that was kind of a late addition of how to upload data into Adobe Analytics. And the example they gave was a list of resorts to look at like a reference table. And for me, this could go one of two ways of, is this something where it's tied to the user's journey? You are already tracking a data point that you just need more information about. So maybe you're getting a SKU or something like that, and you want the friendly name or what city it's in, or I don't know, any number of things. Then classifications is really good for that. If, however, you just want the data to sit side by side with your web data so that you have an easy place to go look at your resorts and you just want to import that data into Adobe Analytics, first of all, consider customer journey analytics because it's much better at that type of thing. You can do it, but Adobe Analytics really is expecting the data that comes in to have to do with some part of the user journey and to be tied to a user. That said, you can, there are still ways that you could do it using data sources, but in general, classifications are probably what's going to meet this use case best.
Yeah, and I can add to that a little bit. In Workspace, if you go into Workspace admin and data feeds, not the admin console, but Workspace admin and then data feeds, you can upload data. And I've done it before, and we've had a couple of different data feeds we've tried to upload, and in AA, it's not the best experience. We've ran into a few more issues than we'd like to. Now we're doing the same type of thing in CJA, like Jen mentioned. It's built for that. It's a whole system made to import offline data and stitch data together and make one cohesive customer journey. So I highly recommend, if you have a lot of data to upload, offline data, look into CJA. There's some drawbacks to CJA as far as what's built out there, but there's a lot of advantages as well. That being said, in this case, I'd always look for, if there's a way to pull what you want from the actual user's interactions on the website or app or whatever it is. You said you're looking for a list of resorts as a lookup table. If there's, I mean, you can use a classification rule for that if there's an alphanumeric or something that represents this, or if you can ask somebody to just pass the name of the resorts and then pull it as an EVAR. You're gonna run into fewer issues like that, but it's maybe a little bit heavier of a lift to get done. At least that's my experience in this area anyway.
And I don't know if the person who asked the question can chime in if classifications was kind of what they were going for, or if it was just importing offline data to have sit side by side with your web data. I think those are two very different things. Let's see if we have any good classification things in this data set. Oh my goodness, there's a lot of dimensions.
I understand what's in the sandbox.
Yeah, because so classifications, there are usually two ways of doing it. One would be to have a rule builder, and that works great for things like tracking codes, where if it starts with EM, you always want it to be called email in this other report. Or you can do it just uploading basically a spreadsheet, a table that, the first column is the data you're capturing online. So maybe a user ID, a resort ID, and then you can add as many dimensions as you want to that of here's what we know about that user ID or resort ID. So you can easily get 20 reports out of a single item. You see that a lot with product IDs of what was the size and designer, color, anything that we want to know about that product. You just upload a nightly thing of your product catalog, and now you have all that information in analytics, even though you weren't capturing it client side. Yeah, I don't know if we have any classifications in here. It'll take a while to get used to this sandbox data.
I would say definitely classifications is something that we've used for something similar in the past in companies that I've worked at. We've had like the countries for a travel company, and then we would actually have all the different business regions, how the business defines their regions, as a report file that we would then upload through classifications. So then we could report within Adobe Analytics in the same regional setup that we would report within the business. So those regions would change, and the countries within each region might shift. So that's why it was really helpful having like something like classifications that you can then just re-upload a new file, and you were able to then report in the same kind of regional breakdown, like the business would look at things for specific countries or cities, as an example.
Yeah, so you can see here that in our fake data set that anytime you see the parentheses in italicized, that means this is the original dimension, and then this is the extra data that's been added on top of that.
Yeah, we use classifications. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Good, no, you go.
I was going to say, we use, I went to classification importer as well, because you said resorts, like we have nationwide stores. So we use classification importer with zip codes. So if we know the zip, then we can say like, okay, what's your nearest location number, and also what's the store name, how big is that store, what size is it, whether it's hours, I mean, anything, you could think of, but also like, what are the other nearby stores? Like how triangulated are you between the different locations? And we upload that on, re-upload it at least once per quarter, because as we add new stores to it, we always want to make sure that a zip code, we have store A here next to the zip code, but then we add store B. Store B might now become the closer store to that zip code. So we're building new stores all the time. So that's where my way went first too, is the classification importer.
And this seems like kind of a basic question from somebody who maybe hasn't used Adobe Analytics a lot. So just some really, really basic stuff. Any dimension, basically, you can create like these additional conversion classification reports is what it's called. So you go into admin, you go into conversion classifications. Thank you very much. And there you can pick your dimension. So there's not a lot here, but you can pick one. So let's do product. And there you can set up as many as you want. So for example, my company, we have like over 200,000 SKUs. Like we track everything by product SKUs. And so that's, cool if you want to identify like, every permutation of your product. But then we need to be able to group these, into specific product names or even product families. And we have like maybe 10, um, classification reports that are all tied to product. So everything is based on SKU, but then you can upload like massive, Excel files, and you do that. With this. So first you have to create your reports, and you do add classification. You put in the name, like, product family or whatever. Put a description, and then you would go to admin classification importer, and there you can upload your file. You do that with tab files, or you might have to use something like WinSCP or FileZilla or whatever, like something to import your file if it's really massive. And then you would have like this separate report. So you would still have the ability to look at everything by, like in my example, product SKU, but now you would see a new report that does product family. It's all based on SKU, but you would now see like this separate report. And what's important to note is that it does update historical data. So it will go back. I mean, if it's massive, like what I'm saying, it usually takes like 24 hours, but it will go back and update all your data to match your classification. So even if you mess up, it's okay. You can fix it. So just some basics there, because this seems like kind of a basic question. There's a ton of documentation on this on Experience League, and how to do classification importer.
And that retroactivity has pros and cons. Like sometimes that's great. You can fix things that were poorly classified, but frequently folks will use classifications to upload further information about their users. So what membership gold, silver, bronze level are they at? Which if you upload it and you're looking at that data from 3 months ago, you're going to see somebody who is a gold member who at the time was, in their data was not a gold member. So that can be tricky.
Very important to understand that the first column is your key value, and everything will be, tracked on that key value, like in my example, SKU, right? So, and somebody has a comment about CJA, and like, yes, this is much better. For those of you who still only have Adobe Analytics like me, that's what you can use.
And it looks like I don't even have access to, oh, it's the new classifications interface.
Yeah. When you upload them, each use case will be different, but you're probably going to, most of the time, want to check the box that says override the data, because you're likely uploading the new and up-to-date data. That may not be true every time, right? It's going to depend on your use case. But like in my example of zip codes, we always override the data because we have new stores that we're putting in that we want to override.
Right. Yeah.
So it depends on your use case, but don't forget to check that box if that applies to you.
And back to alerts, like a little bit, what I also have is like for those, when I see a lot of unspecified in my classification reports, I know that something is off. And so I have alerts there like, oh, I need to go upload some more stuff because I'm missing some data in my files. Then I upload and it should drop to ideally 0. Right?
Yeah.
It's another fun alert you can set up.
So I think we're at time, which actually works out swell because we just got through the last question we got in advance. Unless there's anything somebody wants to fit into the chat at the last minute.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think there's any new questions in the chat. Although I do agree that derived fields is awesome, and I just wasn't going to bring it up. So
I want to say there was, Oh, early on there was a question about form viewed and form submission.
Oh,
Mandy
yeah.
did address it a little bit, but the question, what is the best practices to track conversion tracking, such as form viewed and form submissions? I don't know, maybe we can note that down for next month. I don't know if we want to go in too much to it right now. But Mandy had a pretty good response as well.
I'll be real quick about it. The way I would do that is I would track the form as like a new page, but also I would set a success event that says like form started and, you know, form submitted. And I would have an EVAR that says the name of the form, depending on how many forms you have. If you have one, don't bother. But that way you can track like the form. But the that would be done with like probably s.tl calls, like click events. That's for Adobe Analytics old schoolers. If you're using CJ, it's different. And then I would have the page names as well to see how people transact through the different stages of your form, depending on how your form is. If it's like a 3, you know, page form, or if it's like just one thing, then maybe you don't have to bother. But that way you can see it in your flow reports, or, you know, if you're looking at like homepage and then form, then product page. Whereas if you don't put an s.t call, like a page view call, you're not going to see it when you're looking at, you know, flows through pages. So it depends if you want to consider it as a page or not. I tried to answer that one in less than 20 seconds.
Well done. All right. Well, thank you, everyone.
Thanks,
This was
guys.
fun.
Fun as
Thank you.
always.
Thank you.
Reach out anytime with
Thanks,
questions
guys.
on LinkedIn and stuff. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.